name can cause disparities as well. You see, those same names and resumes can keep you out of spaces, send incorrect information or false narratives or associations with you before a person is even allowed to greet your presence. Just the same, we have this recount as we close out this latter part of Black History Month. There was a season in American history where names were weaponized. During slavery, African Americans, before coming over, were stripped of their given names, family names erased, identities rewritten to reflect ownership instead of origin. They were renamed after enslavers, recorded in books as property, because when you tamper with someone's name, you attempt to control the narrative of earth. But even in bondage, there was still power in names. When enslaved men and women began escaping north through what we now call the Underground Railroad, they did not move randomly. They moved through networks, through whispered alliances, through trusted names. If you knew the name Harriet Tubman, you knew there was courage attached to it. If someone whispered the name William Steele, you knew records were being kept and families were being unified. If you reached a station connected to Levi Coffin, you knew safety was inside those walls. Names. If I polled the audience even this morning, I know most of you would agree that your family name has significance. I believe if I polled the room this morning, we would agree that at some point we were reminded by our parents or our grandparents that we needed to uphold the name of the family, because when people saw you, they saw the family name. A name meant protection. A name meant alliance. A name meant provision. A name meant you can trust what's connected to this. Freedom travelers often carried coded letters with trusted names on them. They memorized who to ask for. They survived because they were connected to something greater than themselves. You see, their personal name wasn't proven, couldn't be trusted, hadn't been tried, and subsequently couldn't grant them passage to where they were trying to go. But the right name opened the door. And here's what blesses me, that even when their earthly names were changed, even when their birth names were erased, there was still one name they could call that no slave owner could control. In the fields, they sang about him. In hushed harbors, they prayed to him. On midnight escapes, they trusted him. They might not have had land. They may not have had literacy. They may not have had status, but they had his name. And so as we go to 1 Samuel 17 today and verse 50, we're going to see the importance of this name. And this sermon is titled today, All I Got Is a Name and a Resume. 1 Samuel 17 and 50. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. And I have to read it like I saw it in the Message Bible. So David prevailed over the Philistine. Here we go with that technology again. Cutting up, but it's coming out. Hallelujah. That's how David beat the Philistine, with a sling and a stone. He hit him and killed him. No sword for David. That's how David beat the Philistine. With a sling and a stone, he hit him and killed him. No sword for David. Somebody repeat that with me. No sword for David. Now put your name there. No sword for Jasmine. No sword for Jasmine. How are we going to beat the giant in our land? How are we going to whoop this Philistine that's bothering us? All I got is a name and a resume. The thick of the text begins with dropping resumes and status of a name. We didn't have time to go through all 50-something verses of this. I dare not hold you that long. But in the recap, if you go back in your spare time, you'll see that we are first met with the intimidating resume and name of Goliath. Yeah. He steps up forward with his credentials. Can you hear it? An armor polish. His experience is documented. His reputation is established. And then we're met with a little supposedly timid shepherd boy. He didn't have rank. He didn't have any military alliances. He didn't have any armor. Matter of fact, the king commissioned him and gave him permission to go down to do this and tried to give him his armor, but it just wouldn't quite work out and fit. He didn't have any notable victories of proof aside from the victories that he experienced with God himself. Yet just like freedom seekers moving north by trusted names, David understood something powerful. David understood that you can have a name and you can have a resume, but it's more important to have the right name. When you are aligned with the right name, you carry authority beyond your own credentials. You may not have the connections others have. You may not have the pedigree that others have. You may not have the boast or the resume, but if you're connected to the right name, his name, you already are aligned to your freedom and moreover your victory. Here, Israel is standing at the edge of fear. For 40 days, a giant named Goliath has been stepping forward with his resume in hand, listing his height. His height was said to be over 9 feet tall. 9 feet tall. But Israel is paralyzed because of the reputation that they're hearing of this giant. And how many of you know that when you stare too long at the enemy's credentials, you'll forget covenant? But then David arrives. David is supposedly really just being an errand boy. He's really out doing missionary and evangelistical work. He was supposed to go visit and see what's going on, get him some food. He was going to check on his brothers and see what's going on. He wasn't down there to fight, but he the only one had sense enough to remember the covenant that God had with his people. He was the only one there. He was there literally just to drop off a little bag of Jenkins and going on back where he came from. He was there to give just a little bit as Jaden is into Dave's hot honey chicken. He's got to fix one to do that. But he was just there to drop something off and mind his own business. But he's hearing the chatter. He's hearing the resume. He's hearing, and he's like, ain't nobody got nothing to say about this. Not nobody can remember the God that they serve. David understood you don't need a longer resume. You don't need louder credentials. You don't need visible advantages. You just need the right name. So we hear Goliath's resume in verses 4-7. His height is over 9 feet tall. His armor is a bronze helmet, a coat of mail. His spear is like a weaver's beam. His experience is a champion from his youth. They said, you can't go up against him. He was born to do this. He was not new to this. He was true to this. He was well established. He been fighting. He been wishing somebody would since the beginning. He came out the womb swinging. And he's been intimidating the people of Israel. He's been intimidating not just the people of Israel, but we need to be more specific. He's been bothering God's people. He's been bothering God's people for 40 days. Every day he just wake up, get up, come outside and say, who wants something today? Who else want to say something about Debo? The Philistine coming down. Y'all remember that scene from Friday where he just riding on the bike and everybody tucking their chains and stuff. Here he come outside every day. This is what did his heart good and justice. He literally woke up just to bother these people. But I have to tell us the true enemy at work in our lives right now isn't just the deletion of DEI and inclusive programs like affirmative action. No, it isn't the faithlessness and loyalty of lack of seniority and development and progression in your field within your company. No, a face and outer representation. This is just new faces and outer representation. But the truth is that the resume that we are up against right now stems way back to Genesis. And because he has such a long resume, we have to be so careful as we are looking at it. This is the same person who started building their resume in the garden where he told Eve to trade in her well-secured retirement plan for eternity for a sorrowful bout with sin and death and shame. Yeah, this enemy stems back into the battlefield where he was telling them, no, keep grabbing people. You need more people. But God said, no, you got too many. You got to send some home. This is the resume that we're working against. The faces change, but the resume is what's been there is the evil one, the enemy. But it doesn't stop there, and I'm so glad that it didn't, because the same person building their resume against us went to bother your Savior and mine in a desert one day. And right after, and even while he was praying, he told him, he said, you know what? You don't got to do all of this. Why don't you use your real name? Why don't you use, I know they say you Mary's baby, you Joseph's little carpenter boy, you be around here building stuff, but why don't you just go ahead and tap into your true and real name and call down them host of angels to get you out of this? You don't have to do that. But he stayed and didn't do it because he knew we would need a name. We would need his resume one day. We would need that name. And so even when the servant tried to get him to, when he said, I was working way even back in the Exodus. He says, I was there when I tried to stop Moses. I told Moses, you go in there and you tell him, no, I can't say that today because I don't know what to say. And that resume and that name just say, I am. So I don't know who that is for today. You just go ahead and you tell them, I am is working on this and is doing that. Goliath, he represents credentials, experience, reputation, and visible strength. Israel saw his resume and they were terrified. They became afraid because our first point here is when you focus on the enemy's resume, that's when fear grows. When you focus on the enemy's resume, that's where fear grows. So then we transition into verses 12 through 15. David's resume looks very unimpressive. He's the youngest son. He's a shepherd. He's out there getting nasty and dirty. He's not in an army. He's just an errand boy. And even when he goes there to try to do something nice for his brothers, his oldest brother got real snappy with him and said, what you even doing here? You out here being messy. You just want to see a fight. And if he really knew it's quiet, it won't going to be no fight if David ain't show up at this point, because clearly none of y'all was going to handle business. None of them were ready to take care of business until David came and saw what was going on. But he says, no armor, no military rank, no formal battle training. Yet David had something deeper. Yeah. He had private victories. David was able to go back and say, you know what? No, I hadn't made a pledge to Saul yet. I hadn't made an oath to this country yet. I hadn't signed up and gave Uncle Sam all that I have, that I'm going to get a couple of $100 just for signing on and then lose it later and never have benefits again. He didn't say all of that. What he said was, there was this time, though, that I got into it with a lion and not just a bear, a she-bear over my sheep. My sheep was little and timid. They don't know nothing but what I tell them when they need to eat. I show them where they need to go eat. I teach them what they need to do. And when the lion came, I defeated that. When the she-bear came, I defeated that. I can't quite tell you how it all went down. I just know I came out on victory's side. He didn't have a whole lot of formal training, but what he did know is that he had a God on his side. Can I tell you something else Brother David had? He had a heart after God. He had a heart after God. Let me tell you something else he had. He had experience in worship and obedience. He had experience in worship and obedience. Because can I tell you this? Here's the next point. Your public platform is built on private preparation. You can't get up and do nothing that you ain't did behind a closed door, well and sacred for God. I don't know what you want to do or what you plan to do, but you got to spend some time in private building up for the platform. You got to be trusted. You got to be tried before you are put out on display. You say you just can't show up to battle without some type of acknowledgement of your battle plan. David knows what he's up against. He sees the plan of the enemy. And David says, knowingly, all I've got is a name and a resume. You see, I'm convinced it doesn't matter what your plan is. You just need to be familiar with the plan. If you're an athlete, you can't just show up game day ready to go and put it on and shine on. No, what you do in practice and conditioning shows up on game day. You can't outwork a bad diet. What's going in is what's going to physically show up. Come on, somebody. If you're a preacher and you're not praying or making Bible study a priority or making time with God a priority, when it's time to war at the battle plan on Sunday morning service, if you are a musician like David and myself, the gift has to be practiced because there is still skill set, but worship has to be sacred for the plan on Sunday. So then as we move on, David goes and he figures out, you know what, I'm not going to stand for this because I know too much about God. I've seen him do too much for me to just accept this foolishness. And he said, he talks trash and said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? This man ain't even on y'all level. He don't even know what's right. He ain't even got, I can't say it, Jaden here. He ain't even got nothing going well for himself. He's not well put together. He don't know what he don't need and don't know what he do need. And you're going to let him determine how you react. David doesn't list his achievements. No, he says, I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. He didn't rely on Saul's armor, his own strength, or even his resume. Even though he had a rapport with God, it was private, but he didn't rely on that alone. And so then he realized all he had was his God. He knew that this name represented authority, covenant, power, and faithfulness. David understood that when you carry God's name, you carry authority. David refused the armor of Saul. He refused the sword. And he simply said, no, thank you. I'm going on in Jesus' name. David went with what was familiar, which was God's name, his authority, and his power. I imagine the easy, accessible weapon to David was the sling and stones, because if you're out there in the fields, you might find a pond nearby. But these were things that were more easily accessible to him. But I feel like David trusted because he said, you know what? If I'm going to go in God's name, God has to demonstrate his authentic power. It has to be shown that he's doing this so that I'll never get it confused that I got involved and that I did this. Because 5 stones in a sling is better represented by faith. If you even really consider the setup of the scene of how David goes against this giant, scientifically, it don't even make sense. But David goes to the front line and he runs to it. Why? Because you got to run. You got to confront your problems in their face. You have to, if you're going to come up against something, you got to be able to flat foot stand. You can't just come back from a distance. You got to meet it with force. That's how you successfully complete something, is if you meet force with force when you are the lower object. The battle wasn't won because David was strong. The battle was won because God's name was honored. Goliath trusted in his weapons, his size, his experience, but David trusted in his God. So I want to know, what giants are you facing? Are you taking account of this giant by their resume? Do they have doctor in front of their name, or do they have PhD behind, or do they have specialists attached to their name? Do they have supervisor in front of their name? Are they are they attached to you as your superior in some way, but have not quite learned how to do the job at all? Are you measuring it by their resume or what people say they can do, or are you measuring it by his name? I may not have all the desired experience. I may not have all the resources. I may not have all the credentials that I think I need, but I have his name. And I have his resume. I have those private victories when I seen him heal and deliver my grandparents. I have that resume and that time with him when my daddy literally fell out in his pulpit, and he revealed to me exactly what was wrong to him to know that he would be well. I have those private moments of worship when it ain't nobody but me, him, and a shower. I have those private moments with him. These are the credentials that mean the most. This is what's building up the most, because I can't stand up here in front of y'all. Y'all wouldn't know this, but I'm the shyest thing moving around. If I could do this from under that chair right there, I would. If I could stand back there every Sunday with Peach sit and sing to the glory of God from under that chair, nobody ever look at me, I would further enjoy that. But he trusts me to put me on a platform because of what I'm doing in private. And so when you got his name, you got victory before the fight even starts. Goliath had a resume, but David had relationship. Goliath had a spear, but David had promise. Goliath had experience, but David had the presence of the Lord. And I came to tell somebody, stop rehearsing the giant's resume and start remembering who your God is. Because the same God that's been keeping you all this time, he ain't run out of strength, he ain't run out of power, and he's still adding to his resume right now. He's not worried about just what he did at the cross. He's worried and concerned about you and what he's doing right now. He's still the God that kept us through COVID. It wasn't that long ago. He's still the God that COVID's still going around and we're still being delivered. We're still being saved. We're not seeing the same impact because he's still building to his resume and his name. Somebody say, for his name. For his name. David said, I come to you in the name of the Lord, not in my strength, not in my credentials, not in my connections, but in his name. I wish somebody would shout, I've got his name. When bills rise, what are you going to say? I've got. When sickness knocking at your door, I've got his name. When opposition stands, I don't know about you, but I've got his name. When doubt creeps in, I've got his name. And if I've got his name, I've got more than I need. I don't just need a bigger resume. No, that's not what I'm looking for, God. I just need a bigger revelation of your name. Hallelujah. So then when we get from this chapter, we can go ahead and graduate to the other side of David's testimony, which says over in Psalm 27, 1 through 6, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even my enemies and my foes, come upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and they fell. Though an host should account me against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should arise against me, in this I will be confident, because I've got his name. One thing that I've desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to acquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble, not when the time of trouble, but in the time of trouble, he shall hide me in his pavilion, in his sacred place, in his tabernacle shall he hide me, and he shall set me upon a rock, and now shall my head be lifted up above mine eyes round about me. Therefore will I after this in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing. Yeah, I'm going to sing. Why? Because I've got his name. In all of my years of hearing this story or this lesson, I've always been so focused the fact that that the giant died. I was glad with just the fact that he was beat and defeated. But this time around, the attention was more so to how the giant was defeated. And even in death, he was hit. The word said he was hit and he fell forward. He was hit and he fell forward. That bothered me. Because I kept thinking about grabbing and what I know. But what God revealed is that he fell forward because I'm consistent. And Psalm 23 says he would make my enemies my footstool. He told David that. This is the God that told David to put that together too, and he had to be able to confirm it. So the giant fell forward. And I also need to tell you, when David did take off his head and send it over to Jerusalem, when David runs into trouble in just a few more chapters over, in just a few more chapters in 1 Samuel, he's running from Saul. He's going to run right into that receipt again. Because where he goes, the priest is going to give him the sword that he beat the Philistine with. Isn't God consistent? So I know I may have just preached my own self happy and talked to my own self today in front of everybody else. But that giant gonna die. And God is going to keep reminding you of how he killed those other enemies of yours. And when he killed this one, he going to remind you of how he let you do it this time. And he going to remind you again to let you know that you don't got to have what everybody else have. You don't worry about getting them like that. You ain't going to never be able to get them like they got you. Because truth be told, they got you off guard to begin with. Because you won't bothering them. You won't looking at them. You ain't care nothing about what they had going on. But now, since they want to wake up the real sleeping giant, and you going to get your God, his name, and his resume, and you go and you slay and defeat that giant. All I've got is his name and a resume, and he's still building.
The only thing that I would say after that is nothing. She said it all.